This conference
everybody.
will now be recorded.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order. We are all county staff or advisory committee members, so I think we can skip introductions. Normally we have a report from our countywide liaison here. Cheryl, do you have anything to share with us? I think you guys had a meeting, right?
Yes, thank you. Last time that we, the Northeast CAC, met was in September, and since then there's been a slew of meetings. We were in our we were in our pause for a while, and the pause is gone, so now there are lots of meetings. And all four of you who are sitting here today are employed and raising young children. So I know that you can't make it to this plethora of meetings, so I try. I already raised my kids and I'm retired, so and there's a lot happening right now, and because you all made this 2-year commitment to be part of this process, I sort of wanted you to know in a very general way what's happening. We don't necessarily need to discuss any of these unless you have questions, so I just wanted to share sort of big picture where things are at, where we're going. On September 28th, the Planning Commission and the countywide CAC met together. We had met together once before, but it was basically training. So on the 28th, this was the first time that we had done a down deep and dirty, hardcore working session. We reviewed goals 1 through 4. We started at 9 a.m. and we went to almost 5 p.m. This is an interesting process because the countywide CAC and the Planning Commission had not met in a working situation before. It was very positive. It was very productive. Andy Davis chaired it. He did a really nice job of keeping us on task and keeping us on time. So we were looking at, Gail, was that draft 3 at that point?
That's correct, Cheryl.
Okay, so we were looking at draft 3. So it had gone through our hands as local county CACs. It had gone to the county-wide CAC, and then so we were looking at the 3rd draft. I felt like a lot of good, positive, clear work came out of that situation. Next up, on October 6th, the County Commission met. It was a work session for them. They were on in the morning. They were to review goals 1 through 4, and it was one of 4 agenda items for them. And it was because it was a work session, there were no public comments, so it was just them. There was at that meeting, and has been, a lot of discussion of the role of CACs in this whole comprehensive land use plan. And what I am clear on now and wasn't before is that our role as regional CACs will end in December. We have to have our local one finished by then. There has been a lot of discussion from the county commissioners. They are concerned that in their estimation that the local CACs in the 6 regional areas don't necessarily represent all of the people. And they are concerned that there are voices that they believe are not being heard in this process. There is discussion to change the local CACs out of the 6 regional ways they're divided up now, to change them to match the 5 county commissioner districts. Originally, the local CACs were set up specifically to represent the rural areas of the county, and I think they do a nice job of that. So I personally would not like to see them changed to match the county commissioner districts, but that's a whole discussion. There are a number of the county commissioners also who don't see a role going forward for the local CACs, and the new proposed plan is that the local CACs would meet possibly once a year. And again, all of that's just in discussions. no decisions have been made. At the October 6th County Commissioner meeting, like I said, they reviewed the goals 1 through 4 that we, the Planning Commission, had worked on September 28th. We had worked, as I said, from 9 a.m. to 4:30, and they had 60 minutes on their agenda to go through 4 goals. So for me, disappointingly, there really wasn't any discussion of those 4 goals. The time was spent on different things, and I didn't think that it was a quality discussion on their part for 4 goals. Next up, October 12th, the Planning Commission met, so just the Planning Commission. That was an official public hearing on goals 1 through 4. And for that meeting, they had some public input. They received a letter from the Oregon Conservation Coalition. Did you all get a copy of that letter?
Yeah, Gail sent that one out to us.
Okay. I thought that was some very interesting input and a voice that we had not heard from in this process before. So I hope you all had a chance to look at that. So the Planning Commission moved through those 4 goals. As you can see, these goals are sort of getting worked and reworked by different organizations at different times. So they're moving through the process. The county commissioners met yesterday, October 13th. This was a regular session for them, so there was public comment. One of the interesting pieces of information that came out of that is that there is currently an opening on the Planning Commission. They have some people who have applied. I think they have 3. Jen, is your application for Planning Commission still active?
I believe so.
Okay, so Jen is one of the 3 whose applications are in right now. So the county commissioners are asking for additional people to apply and agreed to leave it open for 30 days. So if you know anybody else who's interested in working on the Planning Commission, they have an additional 30 days to apply, and then they will make a recommendation. During the public comment period, I spoke last night, and I identified myself as a member of the Northeast CAC and identified myself as a member of the Countywide Planning Commission. And I did not speak on behalf of you. I only spoke on behalf of me, but I did want to let you know what I had said. And all of this very brief background of 1,000 hours and 100 meetings is sort of general overview, but I didn't want people to come up to you and say, I heard blah, 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 and you to go, I don't know anything about that when you are part of this process. So last night, I responded to some comments that were made in public at the October 6th County Commissioner meeting, and one of the county commissioners had said that she felt that some members of the CACs felt entitled to be in the driver's seat. I told her that I disagreed with that and that I thought the comment was disrespectful. Also, I said that the same county commissioner had said that in this process, the local CACs had weaponized the planning process. And I again said that for working on this for 2 years and knowing that there are 30 to 40 people across the county who have made a commitment and are volunteering in this process, that I again found that offensive and that it was not productive to the work that we are doing, and ended up with, yes, well, there will be disagreements, but we should be respectful in the process. So if anybody says anything to you, that one's on Cheryl, that's not on you. So you can send it back to me. And that's where the process is at now. Anybody have any questions about the marathon meetings?
Thank you for spending all of your time doing these things, Cheryl, and thanks for that review of them. I think I'm caught up to date. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, so the next item on our agenda is a review of this meeting summary, or last meeting summary, Gail?
Actually, the transcription service did not provide us with any new summaries for your review, so no summaries this month.
Okay, no problem. And there's no public here, so then we move on to reviewing the draft of the Northeast Community Plan.
Okay, so I just want to say a few words about this before you begin your discussion. The way I put this together for our meeting this evening, I went through and basically did a brief rough edit of things that were obviously out of date, incorrect, no longer applicable, and put all that highlighted in yellow. I also incorporated new policies that we've talked about, and those are highlighted in yellow as well, to make sure that I've captured the intent of what everybody has said. The areas that are highlighted in blue are areas where staff just needs to go back and do some additional research to update figures and data. One thing that I would encourage us to do this evening is to spend a little bit of time talking about the history of the area, the current conditions, and what's going on in the Northeast area, and then looking ahead 20 years. And we've done a lot of this, indirectly as we've worked out new policies and issues, but to really sit down and start fleshing those out a little bit about cause and effect, what's happening today, how is that going to impact us tomorrow, or how is something that happened in the past influencing us today and possibly still into the future. And I'm actually going to put Cheryl on the spot since she was part of this process 40 years ago and worked on this plan. She's probably our best guide this evening to really talk about a lot of that. So that was my spiel, and I'm going to be quiet and take notes now.
And Gail, so the worksheets that we worked through at our last meeting, I remember that we wanted to read a little bit more about housing issues and come back to those ones, but it looks to me like we talked about everything else that was in that worksheet. Do you agree with that? That we either agreed with the staff recommendation or
yeah, that was my recollection as well. And so I've got the worksheet here, and we can reference it as we need to. So I think there were some, I don't know if I forgot to, this one I wasn't clear. There wasn't a recommendation here. So I think anything that's highlighted on this worksheet are items that I don't feel we've addressed.
Okay. The one that you just scrolled past, there was a question about whether or not logs still get stored in the river. That was a further research needed item. Maybe Dirk knows. Do you know, Dirk? You weren't here at our last meeting. Do they still store logs in the river?
No, they don't. They discontinued that. It had to do with the bark falling off the logs, and that was so no, they don't. The short version.
Great, thanks. That's what I thought. So I think that what we wanted to do is just delete that part B, and then the rest of it was fine on that one.
Although it eliminated 1 million log trucks, that was kind of cool.
Did anybody else get a chance to read that housing study summary that Gail and Ian gave us? It was a pretty interesting read, the one that they did in 2019. They offered some strategies at the end, or I guess it's maybe towards the middle of it. Let me find the right page here.
I like the policy too, the clustering of dwellings where you encourage more efficient use of land.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's that was exactly what the strategy in this housing study was suggesting. And I think it's a great idea also. And I emailed Ian with some questions about this, and he pointed out that the limitation for that is usually like the septic and water, because we're not on city sewer systems. And I don't know, there are a few, like the trailer park areas are kind of the only areas in the whole county where there are like clustered houses like that. And I don't know what they do to get around the septic issues, but it seems like there must be some kind of technology out there that lets a small piece of land accommodate more human bodies living on it. But that would be something I would be in support of, thinking, down the line, knowing that we need more housing available in the county, that looking at more clustered things, or even just like neighborhoods of duplexes. I mean, it doesn't have to be trailer parks, but those kind of mid-level homes. I think there's space in the Northeast area for stuff like that.
I think a duplex or a fourplex could be a rural solution to providing affordable housing,
Mm-hmm.
and also have enough space to accommodate the septic system, a drain field.
We also talked briefly last time about like ADUs and the legislation coming through about those, and I think that's another particularly like useful one for out here. People have a lot of space for those little accessory units, or have buildings that could be retrofit or whatever. So
I have noticed that a lot of residents seem to now have trailers, I guess, just recreational trailers. I think just as a response to a lack of affordable housing, maybe. You see a house and then you see a trailer next to it, and clearly somebody's living in that little RV trailer. And it used to be none, and now there's quite a few, I notice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we talked about that last time. Apparently that's illegal. So
For more than 30 days.
I agree on having duplexes and fourplexes out here in the rural area as a possible contribution to affordable housing. Gail, how can we address that in our plan?
I think if you look at policy 1, it says the plan shall designate ample areas for a variety of locational and acreage choices. You can probably revise that or add to it by stating, accessory dwelling units, duplexes and quadruplexes, triplexes would be preferred or acceptable or encouraged, something along those lines.
Great, yeah, let's add that to the end of policy 1. And do we need to put reasoning in there too, like that that they are projecting increased population growth in this area, or is
Yeah, I think the appropriate place to put that might be in our narrative, because we do have a section where we talk about housing and population and anticipated housing needs. And so that's probably a good case to make our cause, with the policy being our effect. Or maybe it's the other way around.
But. Perfect.
Residential housing is going for more than twice what it would have gone for 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And so, in my opinion, the cost of affordable housing is, out of sight. I don't know much about accessory dwelling units, how that, but if that's a solution, that sounds good.
I also, I don't know, I know it's not as big of a issue out here as like in town, but I I noticed there's not a whole lot of distinction between like house owning and renting, and I think there is clearly a need for rental properties as well. And I don't know if this is like even in the scope of this or whatever, but like not everyone can afford to buy even a, you know, more affordable house, and like renting options are important. And I don't know if that's something we can like point out, or, you know, I don't know how it fits, but I think that's another thing that it gets like, it talks about ownership a lot, but not necessarily the renting part.
Yeah, I wonder if like a fourplex could help incentivize that, where maybe a person could build a fourplex and live in a unit and then be able to rent the three other, you know, just for like in Brownsmead, even in the Tideland, you see a single wide trailer go for more than, on no real estate, more than $200,000. So it's extraordinary to me. So.
Mhm. Great. Is there anything else we want to address with housing in this section?
I think they outline it pretty well as far as, you know, designating areas of variety of locations and acreages. You know, Eastern Clatsop County along the highway corridor, to me, is logical where appropriate.
Mhm. Great. Okay. I had a couple other thoughts regarding the draft that you sent us in the agenda today, Gail. On page 9, it talks about water systems, which most of it is highlighted in blue. So that means that you guys need to do some research and update some of the data there. But one of the things I think about a lot with in the coming 20 years is the lack of water availability. And I don't know if this is maybe the place to put something else in here. I'm looking at page 39. I don't know if you have the same pages as I do of the agenda today. Oh yeah, water systems right there. But just if there's something that we could incorporate here about just that the county needs to pay attention to what water is available and look at well options or conservation options, or I don't know, but that's something that concerns me with the next 20 years.
I think
I also
it
want
used to be a person.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Dirk.
Yeah, Mark Auerbach. I think he lived in Birkenfeld some time ago. I was on the planning commission with him a million years ago, and I think he worked on rain catchment systems I think at that time he was working with the county to try to figure out how to codify rain catchment systems so that could be incorporated into meeting people's needs.
Is that something that's currently allowed in the county?
Yes,
Catchment?
they are actually, and they're reviewed through the Building Codes Division. The state has a formula that they use to determine how big of a roof that you'll need depending on slope and building size, and I would assume materials. And then there's a whole set of calculations that are done to determine how big of a roof that you would need to meet your 250 gallons of water per day that we require.
That would be if you wanted to do 100% of your own.
With a link to the state's brochure on that topic for everyone in the chat.
Thanks, Ian. And that would be if you were trying to provide all of your own rainwater or all of your own water needs. That's what that limit of the 2,500 gallons.
Right, that's what our code requires. It's probably high, I think, because most people wouldn't use or households most likely wouldn't use 250 gallons of water per day, especially if they're very conservation minded or cognizant of how much water they're using. So because we don't actually run a water district, it's really hard for us to pull that data together and say, well, on average, everybody throughout the county is using X number of gallons, and we could actually lower that target. But I think it's a little high. But yes, that is what our minimum requirement is.
Mm-hmm. And would this be the part of the policy to put in something about encouraging rainwater or alternative water conservation and
so
measures?
you would want to put in this section sort of the basis for making that type of policy recommendation. So here would be where you'd want to talk about if wells dry up in the summer, springs are drying up in the summer months, or if because of increased development, the water districts are, looking at either having to get more capacity from the city or wherever they're getting their water from, or something like that. So you want to put in that cause, then that justifies your policy that would come in later on down at the bottom of the plan.
Okay,
I have
so
a
maybe
random side comment. The sentence that says the Napa water system is one of the better, oops, she popped it away, is one of the better managed in the county. I agree with that.
great.
I have to give Ed Johnson credit.
He's a good man. So maybe we can add a section at the bottom addressing increased seasonal droughts and concerns with a lack of available water.
I don't know if that's been a problem, honestly, in our northeast region in particular.
I think it's just like worth pointing out too that it's a direct conflict with some of the other areas that we want to promote. Like if we want more housing, like people need water. If we want more farming is water intensive depending on the kind of farm. So it's not like an easy like save water and do these things, and they have, like they're all kind of tied in. And so I don't know how to like put that in there, but like we have to kind of balance all of those like priorities to some extent because they're kind of at cross purposes, kind of like you were saying, Ian, like that one of the big housing, the things that can stop that is like these more infrastructure type things. So it's like, they're all kind of tied in together.
Mm-hmm.
And those are, the building code, I think, requires you have adequate water. I'm pretty sure they do. And then, those water districts have to sign off. So those water districts are really kind of in the driver's seat, as it were, to deciding whether or not there's appropriate resources that can meet the needs. And I'm pretty sure that's something in Astoria, the Astoria system in particular, probably has a really good idea about, they serve a huge area. It seems like a lot of water. So I think with the Northeast, we're in great shape, and that's lucky for us. But I think further west, than those that rely on Astoria, I think that's their issue with the people who manage Astoria's water system.
And what about people who live in our area who aren't in one of the water districts? Like I have some neighbors down the hill who are off grid, and they must have a well or are spring fed or something. Are there like permits that dictate what people can use, or how does that? Is that something we should address here?
Yeah, so permitting for wells and for surface water rights will go through the Water Resources Department, and their water master, or our water master, is Nikki Hendricks, and she's based out of Tillamook.
Mhm.
So the county would not issue any permits for wells or water rights.
Got it. But
The
somebody,
groundwater in Brown's brackish, so it doesn't work. I think there are some systems up in the hills, I guess, if you want to call it, little valleys where they're grandfathered systems, I think. But predominantly the Napa water system serves us.
got
We
it.
wouldn't use that for agriculture.
Yeah, just sort of an anecdote. In my hometown of Fort Bragg, California, and they are under these very severe drought restrictions right now, where they're, basically having to ration water at this point because it's gotten so severe there. And it was like, it felt like, oh wow, we're like into the like apocalyptic times here. To a certain extent, because and it kind of brought home that, like, I feel like a lot of times we hear about drought, but it doesn't, somehow the forces that be manage it in such a way that, like, the end consumer doesn't necessarily feel it, but, like, in certain parts of California it seems like that's where they're at this, right now. And so it definitely can happen, where there just isn't enough water for what people are currently doing.
Could we put in something that just would like ask the county to like review overall water usage with increasing drought conditions in mind on a periodic basis or something like that?
I think that's for the water, the person from the state. I think they would probably make that call. I don't know if we need to add to that. So I feel like it's probably already incorporated into the planning process.
Yeah, because I would agree with Dirk on that. Because the county doesn't run any water systems, we would basically be collecting information from either the Water Resources Department and the Water Master and reviewing their work, or obtaining information from the water districts and then reviewing their work as well. So I think it could be a little bit redundant. It could be seen as overreach perhaps. And even if we were to monitor it, the only information I think that we would glean that would be of use is if we wanted to lower our daily water requirement. And I think we could obtain that information on a one-time basis, or have asked the districts to track it and then base a decision off of that, rather than having staff gather the information, review it, and then make a decision. That's just my suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, if anything, Gail mentioned that the 250 gallons per person per day sounded awfully high, or in her opinion. Maybe we should have that number be more reflective of reality. If that number should be 175 instead of 250, to kind of put it in line with reality, if that's the case.
Yeah, and what I could suggest, or would suggest as a policy, would be we could put in a policy that said the county should review its daily minimum required water standard to verify that it's in line with reality. Phrase it a little bit more professionally than that, but basically that would be the gist. Yeah, if that would be something that the committee would.
Yeah, that seems worth doing. I mean, if that would be something that could help encourage people to, like, it would make it more attainable for people to make their own water catchment systems if they didn't need to meet such a high quota.
There's nothing that prohibits you from having one as an additional water source, right? Like this is just if you want it to be your sole water source. Is that what I'm understanding? Like could you have something like use catchment for, other, like non-potable water or something like that? Is there any rules against that?
I don't think there's a rule against it. I haven't come up against it in my time here. I don't know if Ian's seen any permits come in where they've combined water sources. Usually it's an all or nothing type of situation, especially if you're in a water district. But
Yeah, I've only either seen it proposed as the main water source or as something that's being used not for drinking water, like you were saying, Kelly, for watering plants or something like that. I know some jurisdictions actually prohibit rainwater catchment, but we don't as Clatsop County.
We want to encourage that.
Mhm.
Yeah, just looking at that brochure on rainwater catchment, I don't know the date it was published, but it said the average family in the United States uses about 50 to 70 gallons per person per day. So if it's a family of 4, that's 200 plus gallons a day.
Mhm. It's a lot of water.
Is that just personal use, or does that include like from the food we eat and other ways in which we use water?
I think
no,
personal
that's
use.
just,
This said,
yeah, what comes out of
yeah,
your tap.
personal. Right.
Energy Trust will send you a free low flow shower head if you want.
Thanks for the hot tip, Tally.
I personally find it frustrating and I'm thinking of switching back, but
Good to know it exists. So, okay. So I don't. Does anybody have any other new policies or things that they want to discuss or get added into this? As far as I can tell, the draft that Gail sent us does incorporate everything that we talked about, and there's a lot of areas that still need research, but I think it's off on the right start.
Yeah, the only thing
Yeah,
that I saw.
Jen. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah, I would like to go through the narrative, and we certainly don't need to go through it page by page. So I don't know if there's a smooth way to go through it, but I do have some questions and comments. And my first question actually starts back on page 8. So I don't know if we could randomly say we would go through it in 10-page chunks or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. You're looking at the alluvial lowland section? Or let's see, page number. Let's see, there's a couple different page numbers. Aquatic areas, shoreland areas. Is that the part you're looking at?
Estuary wetlands, coastal shorelands, and water bodies at the bottom of page 8.
Okay, I'm with you. It's page 10 of the PDF. Page 8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But
mine is
will-
printed, so,
Mhm,
so
great.
going forward, my numbers won't match yours. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I'm with you.
This one is actually a question for Gail. The whole section referring to the Columbia River Estuary Study Task Force was deleted, and I'm wondering why.
I just felt that it was information that was from a long time ago, and we can certainly leave it in. There was no malice intended.
Is there anything newer or more current that would replace this?
So the regional management plan, I'm not aware. I think there were some updates that we did in the 80s, and I would have to verify that. But that's what I'm aware of. Nothing that's been done in the past, say, 5 to 10 years.
I have a lot of respect for the work that Crest does. And certainly if there's something newer or, you know, more current, we should replace it. Otherwise, I would be in favor of leaving that reference in.
I just looked at it as cleaning it up. It doesn't really do anything to have it in there. It just adds more words.
It does seem though like if they have made some kind of regional management plan, that it would be nice to acknowledge it here. I think if there is something more current, I'd be in favor of keeping this part in.
I'm gonna have to go in 5 minutes, but wanted to point out the kind of out of order, but I talked about the Wanna paper mill and them purchasing their own power. They purchased their power from the Clatsop PUD, which I think is the oldest PUD in Oregon. And then I think that was under a blue section and talked about transmission for Pacific Power and Light originating from Longview. And as far as I know, the main transmission lines that go all the way to Seaside are owned by Bonneville Power. And it's the substations that Pacific Core owns and the lines to your homes. The main backbone of the transmission lines, I think, is owned by Bonneville Power. So those are just some my 2 cents.
All right, thank you, Dirk. I appreciate that information.
Hey Gail, I know like this is like draft one and I know that it's going to be updated a bunch. But to help me like really focus on reviewing this, can I just get the draft proposal printed and sent to me? I know Cheryl gets them printed, but
Yeah,
it's a
I
lot
can do
easier
that.
for me to look, and just the actual proposal, not I don't need the tables or anything. I have that, but there's just a lot for me to print that part, so.
Okay. Would anybody else like this mailed to them, the draft, the community plan? Kelly?
I'm fine
Dirk?
with the email. I thought I'm fine. I think the color coded email to me was very helpful. Kind of gives you the status of the content.
Okay. Jennifer, do you want a copy mailed to you as well?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
You're welcome.
the printed one was able to retain the color coding, which is very useful.
Cheryl, do you want to keep going with the other notes that you have?
Okay, I'm on the written page 14, Clifton Channel in Bradwood.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big blue chunk, and this is just an FYI for Gail. If I'm remembering the color coding right, the blue are places where you needed to do more research or have more information. Is that correct?
That's correct, Cheryl.
And I just wanted to say that one of the wonderful old fishing families who live in Clifton Channel and maintain a house down there and are part of that very beautiful net shed down there is Jack Marinkovich. And so in addition to the 1,000 other things the planning staff is doing, he could update you on what is or is not happening down there.
I'm gonna have to excuse myself, but thank you. I thought this was a good document and a process. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks for coming, Dirk.
Thanks, Dirk.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see you too.
Okay, if I could ask Cheryl, and I'm sure you all know, but my understanding is I didn't think gill net fishing was permitted anymore. So is that even an accurate statement in this section?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Gill netting on the main stem of the Columbia River is not permitted anymore. So now there is gill netting in what they call the off channels. And whether or not those guys still, you know, maintain a net shed down there, I don't know. Gail, I have a general question also as we're working our way through this. I think it's interesting that the policies are written in this narrative and then again written in the chart with the policies. So I'm wondering why they show up in places, why they're in here in the narratives.
The way the plan is structured, they're included in the narrative. The table is separate. That's the table we've been working from. And I included it only so that everybody could reference the material that we had covered. So it won't be in two separate places. I just wanted everybody to have the tables that we've been working on so you could compare my work to what I understood was said at the meetings. Does that make sense, Cheryl?
Yeah, so let me say this back. So what's written in the narrative are the policies. You just, so that they were clean and easy for us to access, you pulled them out and put them in the charts.
Correct.
Okay, so we need to stay with the narrative. Okay, okay.
You're not bound by that. I mean, if you want to put them in a table format, we can certainly do that. There's no requirement that they be laid out this way. It's just the structure of the plan as it has existed, and so I worked within that structure, but we're not limited to that structure.
Yeah, I like that structure. That's fine. I think that somebody else should have a chance to hop in here if they want, and if not, I would go to natural resources, surface water, and groundwater quality, and on my printed one, it's on page 19.
I think you should keep going, Cheryl.
What I didn't see in here, and for the most part, this is written really well. What I didn't see in here was a policy about streams needing protection specifically the wording that I sort of roughed out here, is that what we need is clean, cold, abundant waters to protect healthy streams. And that's really loose, so those were just thoughts.
And the one policy that was there got crossed out, and that's because the county doesn't actually regulate water rights. Is that right?
That's correct, Jen. Yep.
Okay. So I mean, if the county doesn't regulate any of that, I don't know what, I mean, if we can just put in that loosey-goosey shall encourage kind of language, if that does any good or not, or if there's anything else that the county like even would have control over in regards to trying to maintain the stream flow and healthy streams.
Okay. All right, let me go back to Cheryl's comment first.
Sure.
So I don't think, and the group can brainstorm this, but so Cheryl talked about the need for clean, clear, cold water, primarily to support fish habitat, I think is the most important reason. I don't know that we can make that into a policy because it's really going to be impossible for us to, regulate water temperature in terms. It's just going to be very difficult to enforce. But as we move down here, and then Jen, if you could talk again about what you were trying to have a policy about.
Just what you were talking about, which just feels like that we have concerns about this, but there's not really anything the county can do about it. So it's hard for us to know how to incorporate that in here.
All right, let's see.
And you put habits, not habitats, in that little bit that you just added. Yeah.
Habitats. All right. Oops.
And Gail, my other thought is that perhaps this goes better over in the fish and wildlife policies. There are some really nice policies in that section, and maybe that's a more appropriate place for it.
Okay, whichever way the committee would like to have it, we can put it both places or one or the other.
I think maybe in the other areas, a little better if we're focusing on fish habitat, because this part's talking more about like drinking water or like human use water, I think.
Okay, Cheryl, do you have a page number?
For the fish and wildlife?
Yes.
I do, and I will have some other comments when we get to that section if you want to just hang on till we get over there.
Cool.
That's fine.
Jen, do you want me to carry on? Do other people have things they want to jump in with?
Yeah, it kind of seems like there should maybe be something more in this surface water and groundwater quality section, just kind of future thinking and acknowledging that droughts are going to be more likely in the next 20 years. I mean, like the last sentence of this part that says, but the people of the study area must be careful in their use of the precious water resources in the area, or someday the idea of a dried up stream bed may be more than an idea. It's kind of a funny foreboding statement. I guess that kind of touches on it. I just do you guys think that there should be anything else in this area about the likelihood of droughts in the future?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the language is kind of a little bit too poetic or something. Like, I think just kind of state more in a factual way that it's anticipated that we'll have more extreme drought, which will require, residents to carefully conserve and monitor their water usage. I'm not sure exactly.
The policy that was on the top of my printed one, page 20, policy 1, got crossed out. Gail, just remind me, that's crossed out because the state doesn't do it and because the individual water districts do it? Was that why?
No, the state water resources department will issue the water rights for streams and surface water. It's not something that we monitor. It would be handled at the state level. And that's why we
I
took it
remember now.
out.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for reminding me.
Okay, Cheryl, do you want to, what's your next note?
For me, it's on printed page 23 and it's under recreation. I like this narration. It was interesting to read through the narration. And so just in our effort to update this, one of the things that's not mentioned in here is Twilight Eagle Sanctuary. And I think that it should be added to the narration.
Okay,
Do you want that under recreation, Cheryl, or fish and wildlife habitat?
What do you think best?
I think it's the committee is it's at your discretion. I haven't been into the wild or to the Eagle Sanctuary. I don't know if there are paths there that people use for walking, so I'm not familiar enough with it to really make a good recommendation.
There's a pullover and you can park, and there are some explanation signs. So for me, that's why it popped up under recreation.
Okay, what would the committee prefer? Should we put it in recreation or in fish and wildlife habitat?
There's already stuff about eagles under the fish and wildlife stuff, but there's not like an index there of low like spots in the Northeast that are like designated fish and wildlife zones, like there is in this recreation section. But I don't think of I don't think of it as a recreation area though. Kelly, Tally, do you guys have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I guess I sort of agree that just having a pull off and a sign doesn't like have the same feel as, an area that you would recreate in.
So let's maybe save that for fish and wildlife.
Sounds good. The other one that isn't mentioned in there is the beautiful hiking paths that lead out of the Nat Creek Fish Hatchery.
Mhm.
So if that could be something about that be added to the narration.
Yeah, I would agree with that one for sure.
So the trails from the fishery, they go to Nat Creek Falls, right? Or,
Yeah,
okay.
one of the falls. And down to the little campground that's on the other side of the highway.
Is that a state campground?
Hmm. Boy, I don't know. Do you guys know? I thought it was county. I thought the whole I thought it was part of Nat Creek Fish Hatchery, but
I
got a
think
brown
it's,
sign. Maybe that'd help.
It's not
It's
part
not-
of the
these are-
fish hatchery.
Okay.
And I'm trying to see the sign in my brain.
Let me Google it.
I don't know if it's county or what.
yeah, I don't think Nat Creek is a county
Clatsop
park.
State.
I think it's a state.
Looks like state Department of Forestry.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Google has confirmed this.
So that should be mentioned in the narrative also.
One thing that I think might be missing from this section too is the Nikolai OHV area. And there's also camping up there.
These days, there is a lot of kayaking happening out of the, I was gonna say the Napa docks, no, the Aldrich Point dock.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if while we're updating things, we can stick something in there.
Yeah, and the soon to be upgraded Westport Park will have a new ramp for kayaking and paddleboarding and such.
Cool.
Thank you, Ian. I knew that the Westport one had been upgraded, but I didn't know what all was there. And I definitely think we need to talk about that whole upgrade over there in the narrative somehow.
Yeah, it's under construction. I'm not sure when they're supposed to be finishing, maybe this fall, but it's going to be quite a major improvement.
I'm wondering if there's access for fishing also there. Sorry, Gail, I don't have my page references here, but in the section about access to the river and people being able to fish, I think that Westport upgrade could go in there also.
Do you want it included with that narrative or called out as a separate park boat launch area up above?
Yeah, included in there looks good. I don't have anything else in this recreation area.
The next paragraph about ball fields and playgrounds includes some elementary schools that no longer exist nor have playgrounds anymore. Florence Tag Elementary School doesn't exist, and Nicolai Primary School also does not exist. Napa also does not have tennis courts any longer. Though I wish it did. That'd be cool. I don't know anything about the horse stalls though.
Does Big Creek Park have a ball field, or am I imagining that?
It does.
Okay.
And that's separate, because there's another ball field like across from your house, right, Tally?
Bumpy Field.
Yeah, right.
I think it's
And that
like
one's a school
owned
district
by the
property, right?
school and half owned by the county or something like that.
What did you call it, Tally?
Well, I mean, I didn't call it that. It's just called Bumpy Field.
Bonky?
Bumpy. Bumpy.
I'm not hearing you.
It's BOMPIE.
Oh, okay.
I thought that was Patterson Field.
There's a sign on it that says Bumpy Field.
I don't know it by that. You know, again, too bad that Dirk isn't here.
Do we want to put that in here? Little piece of history?
Yeah, right.
Local color?
I think you'll be able to find reference to it under Patterson.
It looks like maybe there are both. According to napasummerrec.org, there's a link in the chat. There's Danny Patterson Field, Vincent Bros Field, and Bumpy Field, which apparently is closed as of January of this year.
Same address though as Danny Patterson Field. Feels like a rebrand.
Thanks, Ian.
Great. Okay, great conversation about the recreational areas, you guys. And Gail, can you remind me, so I know that we're supposed to be done by December, so, and there's on the agenda, we're supposed to set a time for our November meeting. Are we, at the November meeting, will we have more time to continue reviewing this, or do we need to get through this whole draft tonight?
No, we don't need to get through the whole draft tonight. Your group's in pretty good shape here. Yeah, so what we'll do is after today's meeting, I'll incorporate all our changes and pull the updated information as much as I can get by November. And then we'll do another go through to see if there's things that we missed during this go around. And we will need to pick a meeting date for November because our regular meeting date is Veterans Day, and so staff will be out of the office that day.
Got it. Okay. Well, Cheryl, do you want to go through another couple of your notes and we'll...
Okay, I'm in Fish and Wildlife. On my printed one, it starts at the bottom of page 31.
Okay.
The
Great.
first sentence in this section for Fish and Wildlife says, The Northeast County is perhaps the most important habitat area for fish, eagles, waterfowl, and other wildlife in Clatsop County. I love that sentence. And I think that because we are the Northeast CAC, we have a responsibility to really pay attention to this section. There are probably other sections who will argue with us, but that we are the most important habitat for fish, eagles, waterfowl, and other wildlife. I really like that one.
And Gail, what's that little asterisk about after?
That's our way of, it was our notation several years ago about how people would acknowledge that a section had been amended.
Got it.
So,
So you're just deleting that asterisk?
yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Okay, keep going, Cheryl.
One of the things that I have in my notes is in the narration to add in more information about the role and the importance of the Big Creek Fish Hatchery and the Knapp Creek Fish Hatchery. And my note to myself says that Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife might be a good reference for that. They may have some language that we can take out of there about the role of hatcheries. And for sure, they will have some numbers. It seems like working through this narration piece, there's sometimes history, but there's sometimes numbers of, to quantify things. And those always get outdated, but we won't do this again in 40 years. We'll do it sooner. But it may be worthwhile to say what each of those hatcheries produce, number of fish, or how it contributes to our community. The next paragraph down, headwater areas are sensitive drainages that fish generally do not inhabit, but where human activities can cause a direct impact on downstream water quality. Again, this is a beautiful sentence. The goal for these areas is to reduce erosion and turbidity. And I think in here is where we can talk about. So one of the goals is to reduce erosion and turbidity. And again, maybe Gail can help us with wording. In the narration, we can do one of the roles is to maintain streams that are cold, in which the water is cold, clear, and abundant. To promote healthy fish habitat or something like that. And then if we would also then add that as a policy.
Cheryl, could you repeat that? So about the fish habitat, so maintaining cold, clear, and abundant water supply to, what was your language?
Promote, maintain something healthy fish habitat.
Okay, and then as a policy, let's see here. So this would become policy 12.
There are a lot of nice policies in there. Yeah, number 6 says dredging and filling should be minimized. Off-road vehicles should only be allowed in mining and dredging. It's sort of an itemized list. So I think, and it does list a number of things in there. So I think possibly a policy that is not addressed in there is stream buffers. And we could do something like the widest possible stream buffers are encouraged to promote clean, cold, abundant water for healthy fish habitat. Overall, that's a nice section on fish and wildlife, and the policies for Northeast, I think, are nicely done. Number 4 says chemical spraying along the county road is discouraged. I mean, they covered a lot of things to help the streams stay clean, although they're not in shalls, they're are encouraged and should.
This is also the section where we wanted to add something about the eagle sanctuary. And at the bottom of page 32, it does talk about bald eagles and how their population has drastically declined. But that seems like the place to add something about that we have the eagle sanctuary here in the Northeast area now. I don't know how long that's been around. Do you guys know anything about the history of that? I'm gonna Google it while we're talking.
Jen, the history of the Twilight Eagle Sanctuary?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. There was a fundraiser for that when I was the librarian at the middle school, and we had a readathon. And then the kids who won the readathon got to actually go out on a field trip to the Eagle Sanctuary. It was totally awesome. And the person behind that is Neil Main.
Oh, that makes sense.
So,
and what decade was that?
Yeah, that's the hard part. So I'm gonna have to in my brain fan through those decades. Possibly 30 years ago.
Cool.
I think it was possibly before my daughter was born or about when she was born. That's where the random 30 came from.
And is that county-owned land?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. So it's just a private landowner that voluntarily keeps it as Eagle Sanctuary?
I think it's like a nonprofit or something.
Okay.
Because they purchased the land either from the county or the state and set it aside.
Okay, so what exactly do we want to say about the sanctuary? Do we just want to say it exists, or is there some additional language that we want to put in?
So in the narrative section, like it talks about how there's conservation forest lands for white-tailed deer and nesting ground for migrating waterfowl, and then there's a section about bald eagles, and that just seems like yeah, bald eagles have historically nested in large numbers. It just seems like an appropriate place to mention that the Twilight Eagle Sanctuary is whatever it is, some kind of protected zone or yeah. Great. Thanks, Gail.
That's it from me on fish and wildlife.
Okay. I only have about 5 more minutes myself. Do we want to do maybe one more section or just call it, and or I could just scoot out in a few minutes? You said we have one more meeting to finish talking about all of this.
Yeah. And we do need to pick our meeting date for November as well.
Yeah, oh, can we do that before I have to go?
Yeah.
I also would prefer to be getting out soon too, so maybe we can just pick the meeting and go till next time.
Awesome.
Yeah, and if we want next time, maybe we can do another, maybe an extra half an hour if people feel that we need that.
Okay. What do you guys think about the third Thursday, the 18th? Just push it back a week.
So I am not available that day.
Okay. And then the one after that is Thanksgiving. What about the first Thursday, the 4th? Oh no, that's not a good day for you either, Tally.
November's pretty tough for me, so if there's a way that folks could figure it out without me, I might just not be able to join. I mean, we could try things that aren't Thursday, but I just have a lot of things going on in November.
Okay.
The 18th works for me.
That's a good thumbs up from Kelly. All right, should we just go with the 18th then at 4 o'clock?
Okay, we can do the 18th at 4. If we want to add extra time, though, we'd need to start earlier than 4 because we have our Lewis and Clark meeting at 6 p.m. that day because theirs would fall on Thanksgiving. So.
Okay.
So I'm good with starting at 4, but if you think we need some extra time, we'd have to start like 3:30.
What's your schedule like on the 4th? Is there anything after?
On the 4th, my day is wide open right now on the 4th.
Do we want to do it then, just so we're not pressed for time or trying to squeeze things in? Then we can bogard more of Gail's time.
Well, then we can start at 4 and go later, whatever works best for y'all.
Yeah, actually, the 4th is not
for me.
possible for me. I think I would be home, and I'm supposed to just take it easy. So,
okay.
So I don't think these meetings are anything that require me not to take it easy. So.
Okay, let's do the 4th then.
The 4th is a no-go for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we definitely need Cheryl.
Yeah.
Gail, I think we're doing good on our time. What all will we need to cover in November?
It's just going to be the revisions that we've made today and anything that we haven't touched on yet today and anything new that might come up. So.
What do you guys think about? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Cheryl.
I was just going to say, if it helps, we're at the end of my major concerns to this narration. The fish and wildlife was my big one, and the other ones are just tiny questions or additions. So speaking only for me, I don't have any major content that'll need to be covered next time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Cheryl, if you want to email me any outstanding comments you have or notes, then I can work those in before our next meeting.
That's assuming that I'm doing them before Thursday afternoon, yes.
Well, you said you had a few other comments or questions, small questions or things that we didn't get
okay.
to.
The ones that I've already got in there. Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
what does everybody think about Wednesday the 10th if we just move it up one day? That's a no-go for Gail.
Yeah, because we have our Southwest Coastal at 10, and then we moved our Clatsop Plains, which meets before your group, to 2 o'clock, and then we would have you at 4. So that would be
I would never do that to you, Gail.
I appreciate that.
I'm voting for the 18th. And I think we can do it in 2 hours. We're pretty good at. That's just one opinion, and there are 5 of us here, but.
Well, no, that sounds fine to me too. And then that gives us a little bit, because we're all going to get those paper copies mailed. So then we can I'll like go through it with fresh eyes and I'll be very prepared for the next meeting. Have all of my last comments. So yeah, 4 o'clock on November 18th. Okay.
Sounds good.
Great, you guys. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And are we adjourning our meeting? That's our plan?
I'm adjourning.
Okay.